All right, welcome in everyone to another deep dive with us.
Oh, yeah.
And today we're going somewhere pretty interesting.
Buckle up.
Yeah, buckle up for sure.
Yeah.
We're talking about the future of global power.
Global power.
Like who's really in charge and where are we all headed?
Right.
And to get into all of this, our main source today is someone called Morpheus Thinks.
Morpheus thinks. Interesting guy.
Yeah, he's a commentator over at blockchain company. And let me tell you, he's got some pretty strong opinions. He's talking about this potential showdown, like a real clash, between what he calls the Trump movement
Okay.
and the World Economic Forum, the WEF.
Oh, wow. That's quite a matchup right there.
Yeah, no kidding.
Two pretty different visions for the future.
Oh, yeah. And that's what we're going to get into today.
Love it.
Like, what exactly is this sovereign individual idea that keeps popping up?
Right.
And how do these big tech guys, like Elon Musk and Peter Thiel, fit into all of this?
And don't forget David Sachs.
Oh, yeah, Sachs, too.
Yeah.
And why is Morpheus Thinks saying this whole thing is like choosing between two evils? It's, it's complicated.
Definitely.
But that's what deep dives are for, right?
Absolutely. Let's unpack it.
Let's unpack it. So first, we got to start with the WEF, those Davos folks,
Yeah, the World Economic Forum.
Morpheus sees them as like the ultimate establishment,
Oh,
pushing for this great reset of, well, pretty much everything, it seems like.
yeah. They're definitely a major force on the global stage.
No doubt.
And their Great Reset agenda, well, it's basically their framework for tackling all these huge global issues we're facing.
Like what specifically?
Climate change, economic inequality, all the rapid technological advancements, the whole shebang.
Yeah, big picture stuff for sure.
Exactly. And they've put forward some specific proposals that have, well, stirred up a lot of controversy.
Like those 15-minute cities everyone's been talking about.
Right, exactly.
What's the deal with those?
So the basic idea is to design urban spaces where everything you need, like work, groceries, healthcare, entertainment.
The whole 9 yards.
Yeah, all of it is
Right.
within a 15-minute walk or bike ride from your home.
Interesting.
The WEF argues that this would lead to more sustainable living, more community-focused.
Less reliance on cars and stuff.
Exactly. But of course, critics worry about potential restrictions on movement and freedom of choice.
Yeah, I can see that.
Like, how much control would you really have over your own life?
Right, so is it utopia or dystopia? Guess depends on your perspective, huh?
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment.
Then there's the idea of central bank digital currencies, CBDCs.
Oh, yeah, CBDCs, those are a hot topic.
So instead of using banks, we'd be dealing directly with the government for all our money stuff.
That's the general idea, yeah.
Wow.
Proponents argue that CBDCs could increase financial inclusion.
Like making sure everyone has access to financial services.
Exactly, and also reduce fraud.
What? What?
But Morpheus thinks, and he's not alone in this, sees them as a potential tool for surveillance and control.
Okay, I'm starting to see where he's coming from.
Imagine a government being able to track every single purchase you make.
Oh.
Or even freeze your assets if they disagree with your behavior or your political views, anything like that.
That's a bit unnerving.
It's definitely something to think about.
And then there's that infamous WEF quote, the one,
Oh, yeah, I know the one.
you'll own nothing and be happy by 2030.
That one definitely caused a stir.
No kidding.
So the WEF's argument is that we'll move towards a sharing economy in the future,
Sharing economy.
where access to goods and services is more important than owning things outright.
Okay.
Think subscription models for everything.
Interesting.
But Morpheus sees this as a slippery slope, right?
Towards what?
Towards complete dependence on large corporations and governments.
Where individuals lose control over their own lives.
Exactly. You're totally at the mercy of these big entities.
Okay, so that's the WEF side of things.
Yeah, one vision for the future.
Now, what about this Trump movement that Morpheus Thinks keeps bringing up? Who are the main players on that side, and what are they all about?
Well, you got Donald Trump himself, obviously.
Right.
But also tech giants like Elon Musk,
Okay.
Peter Thiel, and David Sachs.
Interesting mix.
It is, yeah. They're united by a shared belief in individual liberty, limited government, and the power of technology to shake things up, to disrupt the status quo.
Sounds like they'd be big fans of the whole sovereign individual idea.
It's in fact, Morpheus says the book The Sovereign Individual by Lord Rees-Mogg and James Dale Davidson
Okay.
is practically a Bible in Silicon Valley.
Wow, a Bible. Oh.
It predicts a future where tech empowers individuals to break free from traditional nation states.
Like becoming independent.
Totally. Create their own destinies, write their own rules.
So instead of relying on governments or big institutions,
Right.
people take control of their own data, their finances, even governance, like how they're governed.
That's the idea. Decentralized networks, cryptocurrencies, being able to work and live anywhere in the world.
So it's all about freedom and choice.
Exactly. It's a vision that really appeals to a lot of people in the tech world, the ones who see technology as this liberating force.
So we've got the WEF with their centralized control versus the Trump movement's individual empowerment.
Two very different approaches, for sure.
It's a real contrast.
Huge contrast. And according to Morpheus thinks, the COVID-19 pandemic, he actually calls it Co, was like this major turning point for both sides.
Oh, how so?
Well, he argues that governments used the crisis, the pandemic, to expand their power. Almost like a test run for some of those WF ideas we were just talking about.
Like lockdowns and mask mandates?
Yes, exactly. Even vaccine passports.
So he sees those measures as being part of the WEF bigger agenda.
Yeah, he's saying it was a way to get people used to more government control.
And then, he says, this prompted a shock and awe response from the Trump administration.
Yeah, shock and awe.
What did that actually look like, though?
Morpheus thinks points to a few things. Trump's executive orders, aimed at limiting government overreach.
Right.
His focus on economic nationalism, bringing manufacturing back to the U.S.
That America First approach?
Exactly. And his attempts to really challenge existing global power structures.
Like how so?
Well, he even mentions Trump's interest in purchasing Greenland.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
And his administration's focus on securing the Panama Canal.
It was a big deal.
It was, yeah. So we've got these two forces, the WEF with their grand vision for a great reset, and the Trump movement pushing back, emphasizing individual sovereignty. It's a real tug-of-war global scale.
And technology seems to be right at the center of it all.
It absolutely is. Technology is the key battleground, and this brings us to another key element in Morpheus Think's analysis.
Okay, hit me with it.
Artificial intelligence, AI.
AI, right.
He sees AI as a wild card in this whole equation, something that could completely disrupt the balance of power.
So let's dive into that.
Let's do it.
What does he think about AI and its potential impact on this clash of visions?
Well, that's where things get really interesting. He thinks AI could actually lead to more egalitarianism and fairness.
Really?
Yeah, he argues that AI, just by its very nature, is less susceptible to all those biases and prejudices that often get in the way of human judgment.
So you're saying algorithms could be more impartial than us?
That's exactly what he's suggesting, yeah.
Huh, that's an interesting thought.
He sees it as a potential antidote to things like corruption and discrimination.
Okay.
He even makes this comparison to religious ideals.
Religious ideals.
Yeah, suggesting that AI could help us achieve a more Jesus kind of way of doing things.
Wow, okay, that's quite a leap from algorithms to Jesus.
It is, but I get what he's trying to say.
Yeah, like AI could help us make decisions that are truly in the best interests of humanity.
Right.
Not just driven by greed or self-interest.
Exactly. But of course, like any powerful technology, AI has a dark side, the potential for misuse. It all comes down to who's controlling it and what values are baked into its development.
Right. Right. So how does all of this play out in the real world then? The WF, the Trump movement, this whole rise of AI.
Yeah.
Morpheus mentions some specific examples of how these forces are already clashing, right?
He does, yeah. Remember that WF slogan? You'll own nothing and be happy.
Oh, yeah.
He sees this push for individual ownership, particularly in the digital world, as a direct counter to that WF idea.
Right. He talks about his own company, blockchain company, and their work with this thing called a 4IR token.
Right, the 4IR token.
What's the connection there?
Well, we need to understand a little bit about blockchain first.
Blockchain, okay.
It's basically this decentralized digital ledger that records transactions in a secure and transparent way.
Okay, so like a public record that can't be messed with?
That's a good way to put it, yeah.
All right, so it's all about transparency and security. But what about this 4IR token then?
Right, so a token in this context is like a digital asset that can represent ownership or access rights.
Got it.
And 4IR most likely stands for Fourth Industrial Revolution.
Fourth Industrial Revolution, okay.
Which is this term that gets thrown around a lot to describe the convergence of digital, physical, and biological technologies.
So basically all the cutting-edge tech coming together.
Exactly, yeah.
So is blockchain company creating a token then that lets people participate in or benefit from this fourth industrial revolution.
That's what it sounds like, yeah.
Interesting.
And this ties into the whole idea of meritocracy,
Meritocracy.
which Morpheus thinks highlights as a core principle of the Trump movement.
Okay.
He argues that in this new tech-driven landscape, success will be based on skills and innovation.
Not on your family name or connections.
Right, not on traditional hierarchies or social connections. It's what you can actually do.
I like that.
Yeah, he contrasts this with the WEF vision, which he sees as promoting a kind of global technocracy,
Technocracy.
where a select few, the elites, control all the levers of power.
Okay, so it's like skills versus connections, almost.
Yeah, that's a good way to frame it.
Speaking of control, Morpheus thinks also brings up the whole surveillance issue.
Yeah.
He seems pretty worried about the potential for increased government monitoring, doesn't he?
Oh, yeah, he's definitely concerned about that. He even mentions this 2006 UK government report called Surveillance Society.
Surveillance society, okay.
That outlines a future where everyone is microchipped.
What?
Yeah, and constantly tracked. It's pretty chilling stuff.
That's straight out of a dystopian novel.
It is, and he sees the WEF's push for centralized control as potentially leading us down that path.
Towards that surveillance society.
Yeah, exactly.
So on one hand, we've got the WEF's vision.
Right.
With governments and big institutions running the show, managing everything.
Resources, technology, even people's lives.
And then on the other hand, we've got the Trump movement pushing back, advocating for individual empowerment.
And a more decentralized approach, right? That's the core conflict Morpheus thinks is highlighting.
And he sees technology as both the battleground and the potential solution.
Yeah, technology is the key to everything here.
Earlier, he mentioned that AI could be a force for good, but how does that actually work in the context of surveillance?
Well, that's the interesting part.
Okay.
He believes that while AI can be used for surveillance, it can also be used to protect privacy. He specifically mentions Peter Thiel's company, Palantir.
Palantir. Isn't that one of the leading developers of surveillance technology?
It is.
So how does that fit with his argument?
Well, that's the paradox, right?
Yeah.
Morpheus seems to believe that in the right hands, Palantir's technology could actually be used to safeguard individual liberty.
Interesting.
Rather than suppress it, he's arguing that AI can be used to create these secure, decentralized systems that protect our data from prying eyes.
So it's not about demonizing the tech itself, but about making sure it's used ethically and responsibly.
That's the key takeaway, yeah.
Got it. He also talks about achieving a Type 1 civilization.
Type 1 civilization.
Referencing physicist Michio Kaku's ideas. What's that all about?
Okay, so Kaku defines a Type 1 civilization as one that's harnessed all the energy resources of its planet.
Wow.
It's basically a measure of how advanced and sustainable a civilization is.
So instead of fighting over limited resources, we'd be working together to use the full potential of our planet.
Exactly. That's the idea.
That's a pretty optimistic vision.
It is, and Morpheus believes that AI could be crucial in helping us get there.
To that Type 1 level.
Yeah, but even with all this talk of freedom and progress, he's not naive.
What do you mean?
He acknowledges that even the sovereign individual vision has its downsides, its risks.
Like what?
He specifically mentions the dangers of fascism and racial bias.
Oh, wow.
Suggesting that even in a world where everyone's free, we still need to be on guard against these threats.
Right, so no system's perfect.
No system is perfect.
Even the best intentions can have unintended consequences.
That's the reality. Yeah, Morpheus doesn't give us any easy answers here. He just lays out these two competing visions.
The WEF versus the Trump movement.
And encourages us to really think about the implications of each.
He seems to favor the Trump movement, though.
He does seem to lean that way, but he's not blind to his potential flaws either.
It's almost like he's saying, choose your fighter wisely because neither one is a saint.
That's a perfect way to put it.
He even calls them Crook A and Crook B,
right,
acknowledging that both sides have their issues.
Your baggage.
But he also stresses that the choices we make now,
right now,
will have a huge impact on the world we live in tomorrow.
No doubt about it.
So it's not just about picking a side.
It's about actively shaping the future we want to see.
Taking control.
Exactly, and he keeps reminding us that tech is the future of everything.
Tech is the future of everything, huh?
The old ways of doing things are fading fast, we're on the edge of something new, and the rules are still being written.
It's exciting and terrifying all at once.
It really is, and Morpheus wants us to embrace that uncertainty.
To question everything.
Yeah, question everything, and be a part of shaping this new world. Be informed, engaged, and empowered. That's his message.
So what can we actually do then? What concrete steps can we take to navigate this whole crazy landscape?
Yeah, it really does feel like we're at this crossroads,
Yeah.
facing these two paths, and neither one looks all that appealing, like Morpheus thing says.
Right.
We're choosing between crook A and crook B.
He doesn't sugarcoat it.
No, not at all.
But I think that's what makes it hit home,
Yeah.
This is serious stuff. Neither of these visions is perfect. They both have their problems,
Right.
their potential downsides. We got to be realistic about that.
He seems to think, though, that the Trump movement is the better option, even with all its flaws, than this BBUF vision of a more centralized world, run by technocrats.
It seems like for him, it all comes down to basic principles.
Like what?
Well, he's suggesting that even if the Trump movement messes up, even if they make mistakes,
They're at least starting from a place that values individual freedom, limited government.
okay.
And for him, that's a much stronger foundation to build on.
So it's not about agreeing with everything they do,
Right.
but more about supporting that core philosophy.
Yeah, the underlying values. And he keeps coming back to technology, AI especially, as the thing that could tip the scales.
Right, like a double-edged sword.
Exactly. It can be used to empower people or to control them.
Depends who's holding it.
Exactly. And he seems to think that the Trump movement, with its Silicon Valley connections,
Right.
is more likely to steer things towards empowerment rather than control.
He sees people like Musk and Thiel as key to that.
Yeah, they're the ones pushing for this decentralized future.
But we got to admit, though, both of these visions could go wrong.
Of course, nothing's guaranteed.
We've talked about the surveillance risks
Right.
and even AI being used for bad stuff.
He knows that. He acknowledges those dangers. He's not pretending everything will be perfect. He's just trying to show us the most likely scenarios, each with its own set of challenges.
It's a lot to take in.
It is, yeah.
So what are we supposed to do with all this? How do we make sense of it all?
Morpheus thinks doesn't give us all the answers,
Right.
but he does leave us with some key takeaways. First, think critically.
Yeah.
Don't just believe everything you hear. Question everything. Do your own research.
Basically, be informed.
Exactly. Be an informed citizen, and don't be afraid to talk to people who see things differently.
Have those tough conversations.
Yeah, even if they're uncomfortable, you might not agree with them.
Yeah.
But understanding their perspective is crucial.
And ultimately, we have a voice.
Absolutely.
We can't just sit back and let things happen.
We have to speak up for what we believe in, get involved in our communities,
Right.
support causes we care about, make our voices heard,
So it's about shaping the future.
not just accepting whatever comes our way.
The world's changing so fast.
Faster than ever.
Those old power structures are crumbling, and who knows what's coming next.
It's both exciting and a little scary.
It really is.
But Morpheus thinks wants us to embrace that uncertainty, to question everything, and to be a part of building this new world.
So as we wrap up this deep dive,
Yeah.
let's leave our listeners with this thought. You have a choice, you have a voice, and you have the power to shape the future.
Couldn't have said it better myself. The future's not set in stone. It's up to all of us to create it.